Hello, welcome back to the third vlog in my vlog series about communication theory. This week we've been discussing all about theories about messages, so we're just gonna jump right into it. This week I decided that I wanted to discuss the theory of linguistic relativity. Basically what that means is that language impacts the way that you see the world around you and the way that you experience the world. So the scholars behind this theory kind of developed it by saying that language isn't a sole determiner of your perception, but it's a major factor that plays into the way that you experience the world. So that's kind of the basis behind the theory. It has to do with your own perception based on your language and your experience with language. So the reason that I chose this theory is because I think language is really fascinating. It's constantly evolving and changing, yet it's so old. It's been around for as long as humans have been around. So I think it's really interesting to see how different languages affect people differently. Not only that, I want to be a writer someday. I absolutely love to write. I would love to do it for a career. So I do think it's important to take into account how specific language will impact people and how it impacts their perception and how my writing could possibly be perceived by them. So I think that's a really important aspect to look into. It's also very applicable to communication studies, of course, but also everyday life. We're constantly communicating with language. So I do think it's a very important theory to look into, so that's why I chose it. So next, whether or not is this a good theory? I do think this is a good theory. It absolutely stands the test of time. Language is always going to be around, it's always going to be changing, and it's always going to be impacting your worldview. So I absolutely think it's a durable theory. I also think there's a lot of heuristic value to it. It would definitely serve as an aid to learning. So that's a really big point as well. I would say my biggest gripe with this theory is regarding its theoretical scope. Language is so vast, and the idea that language affects perception is very vague and very broad. So I don't think that makes it a bad theory, but I think it's definitely something to keep in mind when you're viewing this theory, is that it can be broken down into so many different parts. So there are two really cool research questions that came into my mind as I was thinking about this theory. So the first one being regarding how certain languages don't have words for different concepts. So there may be a concept in English that in another language it doesn't exist. There's not a word for it. So I think it would be really cool to look at some of those concepts that don't exist within another language. Is it because that idea simply doesn't exist within their culture or that group of people? I think that would be a really cool research question to look into. The next idea that I had for a research question would be to look at just Americans, for example. Take an American who only speaks English and then Americans who speak multiple different languages and kind of compare their worldviews and their perception on different situations. So based on this theory, you would think that they would all have very different perceptions of a situation. So I think that would be a really interesting research question to look at as well. So a quick little wrap up for this week. Today we discussed the theory of linguistic relativity. What that means is that language affects your perception of the world around you. It's a great theory because it's applicable, it stands the test of time, it serves as a great aid to learning. However, it's a little broad for my liking, so that's my biggest issue with this theory. There's a lot of great research questions you could do regarding language, people, cultures, communities, so all of that really applies nicely to this theory. Thank you all for watching. I hope that you learned something really exciting in this vlog, and I hope that my research questions were getting the wheels turning in your head and you were thinking of other ways that you could apply this theory. So next week we're going to be talking about theories about relationships, so I hope you tune in again, and I'll see you next week.